The pen felt heavier than it should have. Ryan Mitchell stared down at the divorce papers spread across the scratched surface of the attorney's conference table, the fluorescent lights above humming their indifferent tune. His hand
Please,
hovered
don't
over
go.
the
We need to
signature
talk.
line,
I
trembling
can't
slightly,
do
not
this
from doubt,
anymore.
Just
but
give
from
me
the
a
weight of
chance.
finally letting go. Across from him, Jessica sat with her legs crossed, one designer heel bouncing impatiently. Her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in an expensive suit, tapped manicured nails against her leather portfolio. But it was Jessica's expression that Ryan would remember most. That slight smirk playing at the corners of her mouth, the one she'd perfected over their 7 years of marriage whenever she was about to deliver a cutting remark. "Are we going to sit here all day, or are you actually going to do it?" Jessica's voice dripped with the same condescension that had colored their final years together. "Though I suppose hesitation is kind of your signature move, isn't it, Ryan?" His attorney, Frank Morrison, a soft-spoken man in his 60s who'd handled Ryan's case pro bono after hearing his story, placed a gentle hand on Ryan's shoulder. "Take your time. This is your decision, your timeline." Ryan picked up the pen. He'd spent months imagining this moment, wondering if he'd feel anger, grief, relief, or some combination of all three. Instead, what washed over him was something simpler: clarity. For the first time in years, he could see the path forward, even if he couldn't yet see where it led. The pen touched paper. His signature flowed in practiced loops. Ryan Marcus Mitchell. Jessica's lawyer swept the documents up immediately, as if afraid Ryan might change his mind. "Well, that's that. We'll file these this afternoon. You should receive your final decree in 6 to 8 weeks. Jessica stood smoothing her skirt with practiced precision. She looked at Ryan for a long moment, her eyes traveling from his worn Carhartt jacket to his work boots, still dusty from his morning shift at the factory. "You know what your problem always was, Ryan? You never had any ambition. You were content being this." She gestured vaguely at him, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "I tried to help you become something more, but you can't polish a stone that refuses to shine." Frank's hand tightened on Ryan's shoulder, a silent warning to stay seated, stay silent. Ryan had learned that lesson well over the past year. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I really do." Jessica laughed, that particular laugh she reserved for moments when she thought someone had said something pathetically naive, still playing the martyr. "Well, enjoy your little house and your little life, Ryan. I'm sure it'll suit you perfectly." She swept out of the conference room, her lawyer trailing behind with the signed papers clutched to her chest like a trophy. The door clicked shut with an air of finality. Ryan sat there for a long moment, staring at his empty hands. "You okay?" Frank settled back into his chair. "I don't know yet. Ask me in a year. For what it's worth, I've been doing divorce law for 35 years. I've seen a lot of marriages end, and I've seen a lot of people walk away from them. What I just watched the way you handled that with dignity instead of anger, that takes real strength, son. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Someone will notice." Ryan nodded, not trusting his voice. He stood, shook Frank's hand, and walked out of that law office into the crisp October afternoon. The sky was that particular shade of gray that promised rain but hadn't yet delivered. Leaves skittered across the parking lot, caught in small whirlwinds between the cars. He sat in his truck for a while, a 10-year-old Ford F-150 with a cracked windshield and 180,000 miles on the odometer. It needed new brake pads and made a rattling sound over 40 miles per hour, but it ran and it was paid for. And right now those things felt like victories. The 7 years of marriage replayed in fragments, unwelcome but persistent. Ryan didn't want to dwell, but memory had its own timeline. Thanksgiving during their 3rd year. Jessica's parents' house. The dining room table stretched long with extended family. Jessica had orchestrated the entire meal, insisted on perfection in every detail. When the time came to carve the turkey, Ryan had picked up the knife, but Jessica's voice cut through the room before he could make the first slice. "Maybe Uncle Robert should do it. Ryan's never been great with, basic motor skills." Laughter rippled around the table, uncertain at first, then encouraged by Jessica's confident smile. Ryan had set down the knife, stepped back, let Robert take over. He'd caught his reflection in the china cabinet glass, a man erased in real time. Emma's 5th birthday party 2 years later. The backyard filled with parents and children, balloons tied to the fence posts. Jessica had pulled Ryan aside an hour before guests arrived. "You did pick up the cake right from Anderson's bakery." "I went to Anderson's yesterday like you asked. They said the order was changed to Miller's this morning." Jessica's eyes had narrowed. "I never changed anything." "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Ryan. You can't handle one simple task." Later, she'd told the other parents within Ryan's earshot that he'd forgotten to pick up the cake entirely, that she'd had to scramble last minute to save the party. The lie sat in the air like smoke, and Ryan had swallowed it rather than contradict her in front of their daughter. The company holiday party during their 6th year. Jessica's pharmaceutical sales firm rented out a hotel ballroom, open bar, and string quartet. Derek Sullivan had been their tall, silver-haired owner of the largest construction company in 3 counties. Ryan had watched from across the room as Jessica touched Derek's arm, leaned in close to hear something over the music, laughed with her whole body in a way she never laughed with Ryan anymore. When Ryan returned from helping the caterers with a spill in the kitchen, Jessica was holding court with Derek and 3 other executives. "Oh, Daniel's back. I guess we have to stop having interesting conversations now." The executives had chuckled, uncertain whether it was a joke. Derek's eyes had met Ryan's with something that looked like pity, or maybe satisfaction. Christmas during their 7th and final year together. Jessica had bought herself a pair of diamond earrings, charged them to their joint credit card. $2,000. When Ryan saw the statement, he'd asked if they could talk about large purchases before making them. "You never earned enough to deserve nice things, but I do. I worked twice as hard as you, Ryan. I'm not going to apologize for rewarding myself." The earrings had sparkled at every holiday gathering that season, each glint a small reminder of his inadequacy. Ryan started the truck, pushed the memories down where they belonged. The past was fixed. Only the future had any flexibility left in it. He drove through Maplewood's downtown, past the brick facades and mom-and-pop stores that had been there since before he was born, past the Bluebird Diner where he'd eaten breakfast every Saturday morning in high school, past the auto parts store where he'd bought his first set of socket wrenches at 16, past the movie theater that had been converted into a community center after the multiplex opened on Route 9. Small towns had long memories. By tomorrow, everyone would know the divorce was final. The story would spread through hair salons and grocery store checkout lines, distorted slightly with each retelling until the truth was buried under speculation. Maplewood Manufacturing sat on the eastern edge of town, a sprawling facility of corrugated metal and concrete that employed 400 people. Ryan had worked there for 9 years, ever since he'd finished his apprenticeship at the community college. He understood machines in a way that felt almost intuitive, the language of pressure and torque, the syntax of hydraulic systems and CNC programming. The factory floor was a cathedral of industrial sound, the rhythmic press of metal stamps, the whir of conveyor systems, the hiss of pneumatic tools. Ryan clocked in at 5:58 the next morning, 2 minutes early as always, and headed to his station in the maintenance bay. Tom Richards, his supervisor, waved him over before he could grab his toolbox. Tom was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s who'd worked at Maplewood Manufacturing since the day it opened 30 years ago. "Got a situation with Press 7. Thing's been making a grinding noise since yesterday afternoon. Need you to take a look before the production line starts at 7. Ryan grabbed his diagnostic tablet and headed toward the far end of the floor where the massive hydraulic press sat silent and hulking in the pre-dawn light. Press 7 was one of the oldest machines in the facility, a temperamental beast that required more maintenance than all the others combined. But Ryan knew its quirks, its sounds, its rhythms. He'd probably spent more time with Press 7 than he had with Jessica in the final year of their marriage. He started his diagnostic routine, checking fluid levels, examining hydraulic lines, listening to the sound the press made when he ran it through a test cycle. The grinding was subtle but distinct, something in the lower bearing assembly. He pulled up the schematics on his tablet, cross-referenced the pressure readings, calculated the torque specifications. Most likely he'd need to order replacement parts, which meant filling out requisition forms, which meant dealing with the procurement department, which meant at least a week before the press would be running at full capacity again. "How bad is it?" Tom appeared at his elbow, coffee in hand. "Lower bearing assembly. I can get it running at 70% capacity for now, but we need to order parts. Specific ones, the bearing housing is a custom dimension for this model. Should have it back to full operation within 10 days if procurement doesn't drag their feet." Tom nodded, unsurprised. "Do what you can. Production's already breathing down my neck about quotas." Ryan spent the next hour coaxing Press 7 back to operational status, his hands moving with the automatic precision that came from years of experience. This was what he was good at, understanding how things worked, how they broke, how to fix them. Machines made sense in a way that people often didn't. They didn't mock you or make you feel small. They just worked or they didn't, and if they didn't, there was always a logical reason why. "You read machines like I read people." Tom had told him that once, meant it as a compliment. Ryan had taken it as gospel. By the time his shift ended at 2 in the afternoon, Ryan's back ached and his hands were stained with grease that no amount of industrial soap could fully remove. He clocked out, waved to the afternoon shift coming in, and headed to his truck. The house he'd bought 2 months ago sat on the south side of Maplewood, a modest structure with yellow siding and white shutters. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with appliances from the 90s, and a living room barely big enough for a couch and TV. The backyard was mostly dirt, and the garage door stuck when it rained. He'd paid $89,000 cash for it, every penny of his savings, after Jessica had made it clear she'd be keeping their marital home, the 4-bedroom colonial on Maple Hills Drive that her parents had helped them buy. But this house was his. No one could take it from him, and more importantly, no one could make him feel small within its walls. The custody arrangement gave Ryan every other weekend and Wednesday evenings with Emma. This was his week without her, and the silence in the house felt profound. He'd tried to fill it with projects, patching drywall, replacing light fixtures, painting Emma's bedroom the pale purple she'd chosen from sample cards at the hardware store. But the quiet still pressed in during the evenings, heavy and patient. His phone buzzed. A text from his younger brother Jake, who lived 2 states away in Ohio. "How'd it go yesterday?" "Done. It's official." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "You okay?" "Getting there. One day at a time. That's all any of us can do. Love you, brother." Ryan set the phone aside and turned on the TV, not really watching, just needing the noise to fill the silence. Some crime procedural he'd seen before. He let it play, his mind drifting. The following 3 weeks passed in a rhythm of work and solitude. Ryan fixed Press 7, trained 2 new maintenance techs on the CNC diagnostic systems, helped Tom troubleshoot an electrical issue in the ventilation system. At home, he finished painting Emma's room, assembled a bookshelf from the furniture store, started planning a modest workshop in the garage. Wednesday evenings with Emma were the highlights. They'd have dinner together, usually something simple that Emma loved, like spaghetti with meatballs or grilled cheese with tomato soup. She'd tell him about school, about her friends, about the chapter book her teacher was reading to the class. Ryan would help with homework, listen to her practice reading aloud, tuck her into bed in his spare room with its fresh purple walls. On the alternating weekends, when Emma stayed with him, they'd make pancakes on Saturday mornings, go to the park if the weather was nice, watch movies curled up on the couch. Emma never asked difficult questions about the divorce, seemed content to accept the new normal without interrogation. But sometimes Ryan caught her watching him with an expression too old for her 7 years, as if she were trying to solve a puzzle she didn't have all the pieces for yet. Jessica maintained a cold professionalism during exchanges. She'd pull up in her BMW, wait in the driveway, while Emma gathered her things, offer a clipped goodbye without meeting Ryan's eyes. The legal necessities of co-parenting without any of the warmth that might have made it bearable. Ryan had started to believe this was his life now, stable, predictable, quietly adequate. He could live with that. He'd lived with worse. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening in early November, 3 weeks after the papers were signed. Ryan was in the garage measuring lumber for the workbench he wanted to build, when his phone rang from the pocket of his jacket hanging on a hook by the door. Unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail, then answered on impulse. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was female, hesitant, familiar in a way he couldn't quite place. "Ryan. This is Sara. Sara Brennan." Ryan's hand stilled on the tape measure. Sara Brennan. Jessica's younger sister. He'd probably exchanged fewer than 100 words with her over the 7 years he'd been married to Jessica, despite seeing her at countless family gatherings. She was the quiet one, the one who sat in corners with a book, the one who observed but rarely spoke. "Sara." "Hi. Is everything okay? Is Emma?" No, everyone's fine. It's not, this is about something else." She stopped and he could hear her take a shaky breath. "I know this is strange calling you like this, but I need to talk to you, in person if possible. Would you be willing to meet me somewhere public?" Ryan's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. "What's this about?" "Something I should have said a long time ago." Another pause, longer this time. "Please, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." There was something in her voice, urgency mixed with what sounded like guilt, that made Ryan agree despite his better judgment. "Okay. Where and when?" "Tomorrow. There's a park on Riverside Road, the one with the gazebo. Could we meet there around noon? I have a lunch break from work." "I can do that. Thank you, Ryan. Really, I'll see you tomorrow." She hung up before he could ask any more questions. Ryan stood in the garage, phone in hand, wondering what Jessica's sister could possibly need to tell him that required a clandestine meeting in a park. His first instinct was suspicion. Was this some kind of setup? Another way for Jessica to humiliate him? But Sara had never been cruel. She'd never been particularly warm either, but there had been moments over the years when he'd caught her watching him with something that looked like sympathy. During one particularly brutal Thanksgiving dinner, when Jessica had mocked him relentlessly in front of her family, Sara had quietly refilled his water glass and given him the smallest nod, as if to say, "I see this, and it's not right." He'd appreciated it, even if it hadn't changed anything. Now she wanted to talk about something she should have said long ago. Ryan looked at the clock on the garage wall. 7:43. He should sleep. He had work in the morning, an early shift that started at 6. But his mind was already spinning through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Finally, he forced himself to go inside, to lock up, to go through the motions of his evening routine. But sleep came slowly, and when it did, it brought dreams of conference rooms and signed papers, and Jessica's laugh echoing in empty spaces. Riverside Park was a modest green space along the Susquehanna River, about 10 minutes from downtown Maplewood. A gazebo, some picnic tables, a playground that had seen better days. On weekends it was usually full of families, but on a Wednesday afternoon in late November it was nearly deserted. Sara's car was already there when Ryan pulled into the gravel parking lot, a practical Honda sedan, silver and unremarkable. He could see her sitting on a bench near the gazebo, her posture rigid with tension. She wore dark jeans and a gray sweater, her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. Even from a distance, she looked nothing like Jessica. Where Jessica was all sharp edges and calculated glamour, Sara was soft and unassuming, the kind of person who could disappear in a crowd without trying. She saw him approaching and stood wrapping her arms around herself despite the mild temperature. Ryan walked slowly, giving her time to change her mind if she wanted to. "Daniel, thank you for coming. I know this must seem strange." "It's okay." He gestured to the bench. "Should we sit?" They sat at opposite ends, the space between them, careful and deliberate. For a long moment Sara just stared out at the river, watching the water flow past with single-minded determination. Ryan waited. He'd learned patience the hard way. "I don't know how to start this. I've been rehearsing what to say for weeks, but now that you're here it all sounds inadequate. Just say it, whatever it is." Sara turned to face him, and Ryan was startled to see tears in her eyes. "I owe you an apology. A massive one. For years of silence when I should have spoken up. For standing by while my sister—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "While Jessica treated you the way she did. I saw it, Ryan. All of it, and I said nothing." Ryan felt something shift in his chest. Of all the things he'd imagined she might say, this hadn't been on the list. The family gatherings, Thanksgiving dinners where she'd make those little comments about your job, about your clothes, about how you'd never amount to anything. Christmas parties where she'd flirt with other men right in front of you and then mock you for not reacting. That awful 4th of July when she told everyone you were too afraid to light fireworks because you lacked basic competence. Sara wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. I watched you take it. Year after year you just took it. You'd smile politely and change the subject, or you'd go help in the kitchen, or you'd spend time with Emma and pretend you hadn't heard what Jessica just said about you. And I admired that, honestly, your restraint, your dignity. But I also hated myself for not defending you. Ryan didn't know what to say. He'd assumed his humiliation had been his burden alone, something he endured in isolation. The idea that someone had witnessed it, had recognized it for what it was, felt both validating and devastating. Why didn't you say something, I mean? Sara laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Because I'm a coward. Because Jessica has always been the strong one in our family, the successful one, the one everyone admires. And I've always been the quiet little sister who never rocks the boat. She paused, seemed to gather herself. Our parents raised us to present a united front to never air family business in public, to protect the family reputation above all else. Mom remarried when I was 3. That's why our last names are different. Jessica kept Dad's name Carter. I took our stepdad's Brennan. But we learned the same lessons. Loyalty means silence. Sara turned to look at him fully. But what I realized, what I should have realized years ago, is that protecting Jessica's reputation meant being complicit in her cruelty. And I can't live with that anymore. A jogger passed by on the river path, earbuds in, oblivious to their conversation. Ryan watched him disappear around the bend before responding. What changed? The divorce. The things Jessica has been saying since you signed the papers. Sara pulled her phone from her pocket, tapped through screens. She's telling everyone, our parents, her friends, people at her office, that you abandoned the family, that you walked away without a fight because you never really cared about her or Emma, that she had to force you to take custody because you were too selfish to want the responsibility. Ryan felt anger flare hot in his chest, but he kept his voice level. And your parents believe that. They want to believe it. It fits their narrative better that Jessica is the victim of a failed marriage rather than the architect of one. Sara's hands twisted in her lap. I tried to tell my mother the truth last week. I told her that I'd witnessed Jessica's behavior for years, that you'd been nothing but patient and kind despite constant provocation. Do you know what she said to me? What she said: that every marriage has problems, and it was disloyal of me to take your side over my own sister's. She said that if I couldn't support my family, maybe I needed to reconsider where my loyalties lay. Sara's voice cracked. So I reconsidered. And I realized my loyalty should be to the truth, not to convenient lies that protect someone's image. Ryan absorbed this feeling, the weight of it settled over him. Sara had risked her family relationships to sit here and tell him this. That took courage, more than he'd given her credit for. I appreciate you telling me, but Sara, you don't owe me anything. You weren't the one who I owe you the truth. And I owe you something else. She handed him her phone. On the screen was a document filled with dated entries. I've been documenting things. Not intentionally at first, but over the past year I started taking notes. Dates, places, things Jessica said about you in front of witnesses. I thought if it ever came to a custody battle, you should have evidence that her claims about you are false. Ryan scrolled through the document, seeing his own humiliation catalogued in clinical detail. November 12th, Year 5, Thanksgiving dinner at parents' house. Jessica announced to the table that Ryan couldn't carve the turkey properly because he lacks basic motor skills. Ryan offered to let Uncle Robert carve instead. Jessica spent the rest of dinner making jokes about Ryan's incompetence. Witnesses: Uncle Robert, Aunt Michelle, cousins David and Lauren, parents. December 24th, Year 6, Christmas Eve party. Jessica openly flirted with Derek Sullivan in the living room while Ryan was in the kitchen helping Mom with dishes. When Ryan came back, Jessica said loudly, "Oh, Ryan's back. I guess we have to stop having interesting conversations now." Witnesses: Derek Sullivan, co-workers Amanda and Steve, parents. February 8th, Year 7, Emma's birthday party. Jessica told several parents that Ryan had forgotten to pick up the cake. He hadn't, she'd changed the order without telling him and used this as evidence of his unreliability as a father. Witnesses, neighbors, the Hendersons, Emma's friend, Madison's parents, teacher, Mrs. Patterson. There were dozens of entries, years of small cruelties preserved in digital amber. 43 separate incidents, each one documented with the precision of a court reporter. "I can't look at this." Ryan handed the phone back, his hands shaking slightly. "I lived through it once. I don't need to relive it. I know, and I'm sorry. But I wanted you to know it exists if you ever need it. And I wanted you to know that someone saw what was happening, that it wasn't all in your head, that you weren't being overly sensitive or failing to take a joke. What she did to you was wrong, Ryan, and the fact that she's now rewriting history to make herself the victim, I can't be silent about that anymore." Ryan stood, needing to move, to put the restless energy somewhere. He walked to the edge of the river, watching the water move past, constant and unchanging. Sara followed, but kept her distance, letting him process. "There's something else you should know. Jessica's planning to introduce Derek to Emma this weekend, as her boyfriend officially. She hasn't told you yet because, and these are her words, she doesn't need your permission to live her life." Ryan closed his eyes. He'd known this was coming, had been preparing himself for it. But knowing and experiencing were different things. "How did you find out?" "She told me yesterday. Wanted my advice on how to break it to Emma, how to make it seem natural. I told her she should talk to you first, coordinate the introduction, make sure Emma was emotionally prepared." Sara's voice was tight. "She laughed at me, said you'd had your chance to be part of family decision-making and you'd given that up when you signed the divorce papers. She's right. I'm not her husband anymore. I don't get a say in who she dates or how she lives her life. My only concern is Emma. And that's exactly why I'm telling you. Because Jessica isn't thinking about Emma. She's thinking about herself, about her new relationship, about the image she wants to project. And I'm worried that Emma is going to get caught in the middle of whatever game Jessica's playing." Ryan turned to face her. "What do you want from me?" "Sara, what am I supposed to do with this information? I don't know. I just thought you should know what you're dealing with." She hesitated, then continued in a rush. "And I thought you should know that not everyone in Jessica's family believes the lies she's spreading, that at least one person sees you for who you really are, a good man who's been treated unfairly. That has to count for something, right?" It did count for something, more than Sara probably realized. For months, Ryan had felt isolated, surrounded by a town that had accepted Jessica's narrative without question. To have anyone acknowledge the truth felt like surfacing after being held underwater. "Thank you. For telling me. For seeing. For having the courage to say something." Sara nodded, wiping at her eyes again. "I should go. My lunch break is almost over. But Ryan, if you ever need someone to verify the truth about what happened, if Jessica tries to use her lies against you in any official capacity, I'll speak up. I promise you that. That could cost you your relationship with your family." "I know." She gave him a sad smile. "But I've realized something. A relationship built on requiring me to be silent about abuse isn't a relationship worth preserving. I'm done protecting people who don't deserve protection." They walked back to the parking lot together, the weight of the conversation settling between them. At her car, Sara paused with her hand on the door handle. "Ryan, one more thing. Jessica used to say that you never fought back because you were weak, but I think she was wrong. I think you never fought back because you were strong enough not to. There's a difference, and I hope you know that." Before he could respond, she got in her car and drove away, leaving Ryan standing in the gravel parking lot with more questions than answers. He sat in his truck for a long time, processing everything Sara had told him. The documentation of his humiliation, Jessica's plans to introduce Derek to Emma, the family's unified front against the truth, Sara's defection from that front. His phone alarm chimed. 2:45. Time to get Emma from school. Ryan started the truck and headed toward Riverside Elementary, trying to push the conversation with Sara out of his mind. He needed to be present for Emma to be the stable, cheerful father she deserved, not the man churning with anger and old wounds. Emma came running out with her usual enthusiasm, chattering about a science experiment with vinegar and baking soda. Ryan listened and responded, grateful for her uncomplicated joy, her ability to find wonder in simple things. They were halfway home when his phone rang. Jessica, persistent as always. "I need to take this, sweetheart. It's your mom." Emma pulled out the book she'd brought from school, gave him space. Ryan answered on speaker, keeping his voice level. "Hello, Jessica. We need to talk." "Now. Can you drop Emma at my place for an hour?" "No. Whatever you need to say, you can say it over the phone. Emma has homework and I'm making dinner." "Fine." Jessica's voice was sharp with barely controlled anger. "Derek tells me you were having lunch with my sister today at Riverside Park, looking very cozy according to him." Ryan's stomach dropped. Derek had seen them. How we had coffee. Like adults do. Is there a problem with that? Is there a problem, Ryan? You're dating my sister less than 2 months after our divorce. How is that not a problem? I'm not dating Sara. We're friends. We talk. We support each other. That's it. You expect me to believe that you and Sara, who barely spoke 2 words to each other in 7 years of family gatherings, are suddenly best friends? Jessica laughed bitterly. I'm not stupid, Ryan. I know what this is. You're trying to get back at me by going after my sister. Ryan glanced at Emma, who was still absorbed in her book but clearly listening to every word. He took a breath, choosing his words carefully. This conversation isn't appropriate with Emma in the car. I'll call you back when I'm home. Don't you dare hang up on me. He ended the call and turned off the speaker. Emma looked up from her book, her face troubled. Is Mom mad at you again? Your mom's just upset about some grown-up stuff. It's nothing for you to worry about. Is it because of Miss Sara? Ryan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. You know Sara? She came to one of Mom's parties last year. She was nice to me, helped me with a puzzle when all the other grown-ups were too busy talking. Emma tilted her head. Are you friends with her now? Yeah, we're friends. Good. She seemed lonely, like she needed a friend. The simple observation from his 7-year-old daughter hit harder than Jessica's accusations. Emma had seen in one interaction what others missed entirely, that Sara was isolated in her own family, that she needed connection just as much as he did. You're right, sweetheart. She did need a friend. And so did I. At home, Ryan got Emma settled with her homework and called Jessica from his bedroom with the door closed. I don't appreciate you making accusations in front of Emma. Whatever issues you have with me, we keep them between us. Then don't give me issues to have. Stay away from my sister, Ryan. This is beyond inappropriate. Sara is an adult who can choose her own friends. So am I. You don't get to control who either of us spends time with. I can absolutely control it if your relationship with her affects Emma. And it will affect Emma when people start talking when she hears gossip about her father moving on with her aunt. There's nothing to move on with. We had coffee. We talked. We're 2 people who understand each other's situations and found friendship in that understanding. If you want to make it into something ugly that says more about you than it does about us. Jessica was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed softer, more calculating. You know what I think? I think Sara saw an opportunity. She's always been the invisible one, the one nobody noticed. Now she can play the hero who saved poor Ryan from his terrible wife. It's quite the narrative upgrade for someone who's never been interesting. That's cruel even for you. It's honest. Sara has spent her entire life in my shadow. Finally, she's found a way to matter by positioning herself as the good sister while painting me as the villain. And you're eating it up because it fits your victim narrative. Ryan felt anger rise hot in his chest. Is that what you tell yourself? That you're the real victim here? That Sara speaking the truth about how you treated me is somehow betrayal rather than courage? I treated you like a husband who couldn't provide the life I wanted. That's not abuse, Daniel. That's honesty. You humiliated me at every opportunity. You mocked my job, my clothes, my interests. You turned family gatherings into performances where I was the punchline. That's not honesty, Jessica. That's cruelty. Oh, please. You're so dramatic. I teased you sometimes. Couples do that. There's a difference between teasing and contempt, between joking and systematic degradation. Ryan's voice was shaking now. And the fact that you can't see that difference is exactly why our marriage failed. Our marriage failed because you were content to be mediocre, because you lacked ambition and drive and any desire to be more than you were. I needed a partner who could match me, who could build something significant. Instead, I got someone who was satisfied fixing machines and living in a modest house and never wanting anything bigger. I wanted a family. I wanted a home where I felt valued. I wanted a wife who saw me as enough. Those aren't small things, Jessica. They're everything. Then you should have married someone who wanted that too. Instead, you married me and spent 7 years trying to reshape me into someone I wasn't. When that failed, you divorced me and rewrote history to make yourself the victim of my inadequacy. I don't have to listen to this. Jessica's voice had gone cold. Stay away from Sara. If I find out you're continuing this, whatever it is, I'll take it to my lawyer. I'll argue that your judgment is compromised, that you're involving Emma in an inappropriate relationship with her aunt. You do what you need to do, but I'm done letting you dictate my life through threats. I'm done apologizing for existing in ways that don't serve your narrative. Sara and I are friends, and that's not changing because you've decided to be threatened by it. He hung up before she could respond, his heart hammering. He'd never stood up to Jessica like that, never pushed back so directly. Part of him was terrified of the consequences. Part of him felt lighter than he had in years. His phone buzzed immediately. Jessica calling back. He declined it. It buzzed again. He turned it off. In the kitchen, Emma was working on her math homework, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration, the way it always did when she was thinking hard. She looked up when Ryan entered. All done with your phone call? All done. How's the homework going? Good. I'm almost finished. She chewed on her pencil. Daddy, why is Mom mad about Miss Sara? Ryan considered how much to explain, how much a 7-year-old needed to understand. Sometimes when grown-ups get divorced, they have complicated feelings about their ex-spouse spending time with other people. Your mom's just adjusting to all the changes, same as you are. But you're allowed to have friends, right? Even if Mom doesn't like them. Yes, sweetheart. I'm allowed to have friends. Good. Emma returned to her homework. I like Miss Sara. She has kind eyes. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan's phone powered back on to find 17 missed calls from Jessica, 6 voicemails he didn't listen to, and 1 text from Sara. Marcus called Jessica, didn't he? Ryan stared at the message. Marcus was Derek's first name. Derek Marcus Sullivan. How did Sara know Derek had seen them? Yes. She's threatening to take it to her lawyer, claiming our friendship is inappropriate. I'm sorry. This is my fault. I should never have suggested coffee. Sara, stop. This isn't your fault. It's Jessica's pattern control through threats and intimidation. I'm not playing that game anymore. What are you going to do? Keep living my life. Keep being your friend. Keep showing Emma that you don't let bullies, even sophisticated ones in designer clothes, dictate your choices. A long pause, then 3 dots appearing and disappearing several times. You're remarkable. You know that I'm just tired of being afraid. There's a difference. Maybe. Or maybe being tired of fear is what makes someone remarkable. Ryan smiled at his phone, feeling something warm settle in his chest. Whatever happened next, whether Jessica followed through on her threats, whether the town's gossip machine went into overdrive, whether this friendship with Sara complicated his life in ways he couldn't yet predict, he'd face it the same way he'd faced everything else these past months. With dignity, with honesty, with Emma's well-being as his North Star. He went to bed that night with a strange sense of peace, as if something fundamental had shifted. Sara had given him a gift he hadn't known he needed: validation. Proof that he hadn't imagined the cruelty, that his experience had been real and witnessed and documented. And more than that, she'd given him an ally. Someone willing to stand up for truth, even when it cost her dearly. Ryan slept better than he had in months. The next morning he woke to find all 4 of his truck's tires slashed. Ryan stood in his driveway at 5:30 in the morning, coffee cup cooling in his hand, staring at the damage. All 4 tires deflated and ruined, the rubber cut cleanly in a way that spoke of deliberation rather than random vandalism. The cuts were precise, methodical. Someone had taken their time. His first instinct was to call the police to report it to make it official. But something stopped him. In a town like Maplewood, where everyone knew everyone, making a police report would just feed the gossip machine. And he had no proof of who'd done it, even though suspicions settled in his gut like a stone. Instead, he called Tom at work, explained the situation, and asked if someone could cover his morning shift. Then he called a tire shop, arranged for them to come out and replace all 4 tires, and sat on his front porch, watching the sun come up over Maplewood while he waited. The sky bled pink and orange, indifferent to his $680 problem. His phone buzzed around 7. Sara. "Are you okay? I had a weird feeling when I woke up. Somebody slashed my tires last night. All 4 of them." "Oh my God. Do you think it was, I don't know. Could have been anyone who's heard the rumors. Could have been random. Doesn't matter. I'm getting them replaced. This is escalating, Ryan. Maybe we should cool things down for a while. Give people time to forget. Or maybe we keep living our lives and refuse to let vandalism dictate our choices. You're going to get hurt worse than slashed tires. Maybe. But I'm not going to live in fear of what Jessica or Derek or anyone else might do. I did that for years. I'm done." The tire shop arrived at 8, and by 9:30 Ryan had 4 new tires and a significantly lighter bank account. He made it to work for the afternoon shift, enduring Tom's concerned questions and the curious looks from other workers who'd already heard about the incident. News traveled fast in Maplewood. During his lunch break in the maintenance bay, Tom set down his sandwich and looked at Ryan with the kind of direct concern that came from decades of reading people. "You've been quiet all week. Want to talk about it?" Ryan shook his head. "Just personal stuff. I'll work through it. That ex-wife of yours giving you trouble again? Something like that." Tom nodded slowly, understanding in his weathered face. "My ex put me through hell for 3 years after our divorce. Used our kids as weapons. Turned every pickup and drop-off into a battlefield. You know what finally changed things? What I stopped reacting. Stopped giving her the satisfaction of seeing me angry or hurt. Just stayed steady, stayed present for my kids. And eventually she got bored with the game." Tom clapped him on the shoulder. "Not saying it's easy, but sometimes the best revenge is just being the better parent." Ryan tried to hold on to that advice as the days accumulated into weeks. November slid toward December, the Pennsylvania air turning sharp and unforgiving. Jessica maintained her pattern of icy professionalism during Emma exchanges, never mentioning the conversation about Sara, never acknowledging the tension that vibrated between them like a plucked string. But Ryan could feel something building, some pressure accumulating behind the dam of her silence. Sara texted occasionally brief check-ins, the kind of casual conversation that felt oddly comforting coming from someone who understood the context of his situation. They didn't meet again, both aware that another coffee date would be weaponized immediately, but the connection remained a thin thread of alliance in otherwise hostile territory. Then 3 weeks after the slashed tires, Ryan's lawyer called. "Frank Morrison here. I just received a very interesting call from Jessica's attorney. They're requesting an emergency modification of the custody arrangement, claiming that your relationship with Sara Brennan constitutes a destabilizing influence on Emma." Ryan closed his eyes, standing in the factory parking lot with December wind cutting through his jacket. "Of course they are. I told them they'd need to provide evidence of actual harm to Emma, not just speculation about your personal life. But Ryan, I need to ask you directly, is there anything inappropriate happening with Sara Brennan?" "No. We're friends. We've had coffee once." "That's it." "Good. Because if this goes to court, Jessica's going to try to paint it as an affair that started before the divorce was final. She'll argue that you were emotionally unfaithful, that you're now involving Emma in an inappropriate relationship with her aunt. It'll get ugly. Let it get ugly. I'm not hiding anymore." Frank was quiet for a moment. "I admire your principles, Daniel. I really do. But principles don't always win in family court. Sometimes strategic retreat is smarter than standing your ground. I'm not retreating. Not this time." "Okay, then we prepare for a fight. I'll need you to document everything, every interaction with Sara, every conversation with Jessica, anything that might be relevant. And Ryan, be careful. Don't give them any ammunition. After the call ended, Ryan sat in his truck watching workers stream in and out for their shifts. Regular people with regular lives untouched by the drama that seemed to follow him lately. He envied them their normalcy, even as he knew he wouldn't trade his choices to have it back. His phone rang again. Sara, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "I heard about the custody motion. My mother called to gloat, said, 'This is what happens when people make selfish choices.' I'm sorry you're caught in this. I'm not caught. I'm choosing to be here. There's a difference." Sara's voice was stronger than he'd heard it. "And I've decided something. I'm going to submit a statement to your lawyer, a formal account of what I witnessed during your marriage. Dates, specific incidents, everything I've documented. If Jessica wants to make this about fitness as a parent, then let's talk about emotional abuse and systematic humiliation. Sara, that could destroy whatever's left of your relationship with your family." "What's left?" "My mother's ultimatum. My sister's manipulation." "I'm not losing anything worth keeping." She paused. "But I'm gaining something, self-respect. The knowledge that when it mattered I chose truth over comfort. You taught me that, Ryan, whether you meant to or not. I never wanted to come between you and your family. You didn't. They did that themselves by requiring my silence as the price of membership. I'm just finally recognizing it for what it was." Her voice softened. "We're going to get through this. Both of us. Because people who choose integrity over ease, they're stronger than people who choose comfortable lies." Ryan hoped she was right. But as he sat there with new tires on his truck and a custody battle looming and the weight of small-town judgment pressing down, he couldn't help but wonder if strength would be enough. Thanksgiving arrived with the promise of divided loyalties and careful choreography. Ryan had Emma for the actual Thursday, while Jessica would take her Friday as a makeup day. It meant Ryan could create something untainted by the specter of what came before. They cooked together in his small kitchen, a turkey that was probably too big for two people, mashed potatoes from scratch, green beans with slivered almonds, and a pumpkin pie that Emma decorated with whipped cream faces. The house smelled like butter and sage and something that felt close to healing. They watched the parade on TV in their pajamas, played board games in the afternoon, and took a walk along the river as the sun set in streaks of orange and purple that looked almost too beautiful to be real. "This is my favorite Thanksgiving ever." Emma's hand was warm in his as they walked the river path. "Better than the fancy ones at Grandma's house." "Yeah. Why is that?" "Because it's just us and you're happy. You smile more now than you used to when you and Mom were married." The observation hit him square in the chest. Validation from the person whose opinion mattered most. "I am happier. Even with all the hard stuff happening, I'm happier because I get to be myself." "Does that make sense?" "I think so." Emma kicked at a pile of leaves. "Mom called yesterday. Wanted to know if you said mean things about her." Ryan's step faltered. "What did you tell her?" "I told her you never say mean things about anybody. You just say sometimes grown-ups make choices that are right for them but hard for other people." Emma looked up at him. "Was that okay?" "That was perfect, sweetheart. You told the truth, and you did it with kindness. I'm proud of you." That evening, after Emma was asleep with a belly full of turkey and pie, Ryan sat on his front porch with a cup of coffee, watching Maplewood settle into nighttime quiet. His phone buzzed with a text from Sara. "Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you and Emma had a beautiful day." "We did. Cooked together, laughed a lot, took a walk by the river." "What about you?" "Quiet. Just me and a novel and some takeout Chinese food. It was actually kind of perfect. You should have joined us. There was plenty of food." A long pause before her response appeared. "I didn't want to complicate things with the hearing coming up." Ryan thought about that, about how they'd both been so careful lately maintaining distance to avoid giving Jessica more ammunition. But the distance felt wrong, like they were letting fear dictate their choices, instead of making decisions from a place of integrity. "Next year you're invited for Thanksgiving. Officially. I'm not hiding friendships or pretending connections don't exist just because someone might twist them into something they're not." "Are you sure I'm sure?" Life's too short to spend it worried about what Jessica or anyone else thinks. Okay, next year then. I'll bring dessert. Then after a moment, Daniel, thank you for being the kind of person worth standing up for. He didn't know how to respond to that, so he just sent back, same to you. Friday brought Emma's handoff to Jessica, and with it, the first crack in Jessica's armor. She pulled up at 5:30 as scheduled, but instead of her usual pattern of waiting in the car, she got out and walked to the door. Ryan opened it with Emma's overnight bag already in hand. Right on time. Jessica's expression was harder to read than usual, something beneath the professional mask that looked almost like uncertainty. We need to talk. Can I come in for a minute? Just us? Ryan glanced back at Emma, who was gathering her stuffed rabbit and favorite book. Emma, sweetheart, why don't you put your things in Mom's car? I'll be right there. Emma nodded and took her bag, leaving them standing in the doorway with the evening cold seeping inside. Friday was a disaster. You knew that already. Jessica's arms were crossed, defensive. Saturday at the aquarium was better, just us, and she seemed to relax. But then Derek came over for Sunday brunch and she shut down completely. Wouldn't talk to him, wouldn't make eye contact, just sat there looking miserable. Ryan waited, sensing there was more. I know what you're going to say, that I pushed too hard too fast. And you're probably right. The admission seemed to cost her something. But I need you to understand Derek is going to be part of my life, part of Emma's life eventually. She needs to adjust to that. Eventually being the key word. She's 7 years old and her whole world has been turned upside down in the past few months. She needs time to adjust to the divorce before you add another major change. I can't put my life on hold indefinitely. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to consider Emma's emotional readiness. To maybe slow down, let her get comfortable with the idea before forcing interactions. Ryan kept his voice level, fighting the urge to point out that none of this would be happening if Jessica had shown some basic consideration in the first place. Jessica was quiet for a long moment, staring at her car where Emma sat waiting in the back seat. Derek thinks we should back off. Give Emma some space. Let her come around naturally instead of forcing it. That sounds reasonable. It does. Jessica looked at him, then really looked at him, and for just a second Ryan saw past the armor to something that might have been regret. I'm not good at this, at putting someone else's needs first. I never learned how. It was the closest thing to an apology Ryan had ever heard from her. Emma needs consistency right now. She needs to know that both her parents are reliable, that we're both focused on what's best for her, not what's convenient for us or what fits our timelines. I can do that. Jessica hesitated, then continued. I should go. But Ryan, thank you for talking her through Friday night. She told me what you said about being overwhelmed. It helped. She walked to her car without waiting for a response, and Ryan watched her drive away, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. Jessica expressing gratitude was so rare that he didn't quite trust it. But maybe there was hope that they could eventually co-parent without constant conflict. December brought the first real snow, transforming Maplewood into something from a postcard. Ryan spent his evenings after work building the bookshelf he'd planned for Emma's room, the rhythm of measuring and cutting and joining wood pieces together becoming a form of meditation. The simple act of creating something with his hands, something that would hold his daughter's treasures for years to come, felt like reclaiming a part of himself he'd lost. Sara's statement was submitted to the court in mid-December, 52 pages, documenting 47 separate incidents of emotional abuse. According to Frank, Jessica's response was immediate and volcanic. She filed a counterclaim accusing Sara of fabricating evidence of harboring romantic feelings for Ryan that biased her testimony of being unstable and vindictive. The accusations were wild enough that Frank actually laughed when he read them to Ryan over the phone. This is desperation. When someone's case is falling apart, they throw everything at the wall hoping something sticks. But courts see through this kind of thing, especially when the evidence is as solid as what Sara's provided. The week before Christmas, Ryan received an unexpected visitor. Jessica's mother, Patricia Carter, showed up at his door on a Saturday afternoon while Emma was at a birthday party. Patricia was an imposing woman in her 60s, perfectly coiffed and dressed as if she were attending a country club luncheon rather than making a house call to her former son-in-law's modest home. "Daniel, I hope I'm not interrupting." Her tone suggested she didn't particularly care if she was. "Mrs. Carter, this is unexpected. May I come in? I won't take much of your time." Ryan stepped aside, letting her into the small living room. She glanced around with barely concealed judgment at the second-hand furniture, the children's drawings on the refrigerator, the general unpretentiousness of everything. Coffee Ryan offered more out of habit than hospitality. "No, thank you. I'll say what I came to say and leave." Patricia sat on the edge of the couch as if afraid it might contaminate her designer slacks. "I'm here to ask you to drop the custody proceedings, to accept the arrangement as it stands and stop dragging my family through this public spectacle. I didn't start the custody proceedings. Jessica did. I'm just defending myself. Semantics. The point is, this has gone far enough. You've already destroyed one daughter. Don't destroy both of them." Ryan sat across from her, keeping his expression neutral despite the anger building in his chest. "I haven't destroyed anyone. You've turned Sara against her family, poisoned her mind with your victim narrative, convinced her to betray her own sister for what attention, sympathy. The delusion that you two have some special connection." Patricia's voice dripped with disdain. "Sara was always weak, always too easily influenced. But I never thought she'd sink to this level of disloyalty. Sara made her own choices based on what she witnessed and what her conscience demanded. If you want to blame someone for her distance from the family, look at the people who required her silence as the price of membership. Don't you dare lecture me about family dynamics. You were married to my daughter for 7 years and learned nothing about how successful people operate. Jessica needed a partner with ambition, with drive. Instead, she got you content to work in a factory and live in this?" She gestured dismissively around the room. "This hovel, this house is paid for. It's clean and safe and filled with love. That's more than I can say for Jessica's colonial showcase that was always more concerned with appearances than actual happiness." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "You think you're better than us because you've embraced mediocrity, because you've convinced yourself that struggling is noble. The world rewards winners. Ryan, not people who settle for less than they could achieve. I'm not settling. I'm choosing what matters to me. Being present for my daughter, having integrity, building a life based on honest values rather than performance." Ryan leaned forward. "And Mrs. Carter, I don't need your approval or your understanding. I just need you to stop interfering in my relationship with my daughter. Your relationship with Emma is fine. It's your relationship with Sara that's the problem. End it. Stop seeing her. Stop encouraging her delusions of moral superiority, and I'll convince Jessica to drop the custody modification." "No." Patricia looked genuinely shocked, as if she'd never encountered someone who wouldn't capitulate to her demands. "No. No. Sara is my friend, a genuine one based on mutual respect and shared truth. I'm not ending that friendship because you or Jessica find it inconvenient." Ryan stood. "I think this conversation is over. I'll see you at the custody hearing in January if Jessica hasn't withdrawn it by then." Patricia rose, her face flushed with anger. "You're making a terrible mistake. Jessica has resources you can't imagine, lawyers, connections, the ability to make your life very difficult. She's been making my life difficult for 7 years. I survived that. I'll survive whatever comes next." Ryan walked to the door and opened it. "Goodbye, Mrs. Carter." She swept past him without another word, and Ryan watched her drive away in her Mercedes, his hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. He'd just burned whatever bridge might have existed with Jessica's family. There was no going back now. His phone rang almost immediately. Sara, her voice tight. "My mother just called, said she went to see you and you were unbelievably rude." "What happened?" Ryan recounted the conversation, leaving nothing out. When he finished, Sara was quiet for a long moment. "She offered you a deal. Drop me, and Jessica drops the custody case." "Yes." "And you said no." "Of course I said no." Sara's voice was thick with emotion. "You could have made all of this go away, protected yourself and Emma from months of legal battles. Why didn't you take it? Because some things aren't negotiable. Friendships built on truth aren't bargaining chips. And I'm done teaching Emma that you sacrifice people who matter when it's convenient. He paused. Did I make the wrong choice? No. You made the brave choice. The right choice. Sara laughed shakily. I just can't believe you chose me over the easy way out. It wasn't even a difficult decision. They talked for another hour, making plans for Christmas. Sara would join them for dinner, bringing her famous apple pie and helping Emma decorate cookies. It felt natural, right, like pieces of their lives fitting together in ways that made sense. Christmas Day was exactly what Ryan had hoped for. Emma woke early to find presents under their modest tree books and art supplies and a new bicycle that Ryan had assembled the night before. Sara arrived mid-morning with pie and ingredients for cookies, and the three of them spent the day baking, laughing, watching holiday movies, and building the kind of memories that mattered more than expensive gifts or elaborate celebrations. Watching Sara help Emma roll out cookie dough, listening to them debate whether snowman cookies needed 3 buttons or 4, Ryan felt something shift in his chest. This was what family could look like, chosen authentic, built on mutual care rather than obligation or blood ties. That evening, after Emma was asleep and they were cleaning up the kitchen together, Sara turned to him with flour still dusting her cheek. Thank you for today, for including me. It's been years since Christmas felt like anything other than a performance. Thank you for being here, for being yourself. Ryan reached out and gently brushed the flour from her face, and the moment stretched between them charged with possibility. Sara stepped closer, her eyes searching his. Ryan, I need to tell you something, and it might complicate everything, but I can't not say it anymore. Okay. I think I'm falling for you. Not because you're Jessica's ex-husband, or because it would upset my family, or any of the dramatic reasons they'd claim, but because you're kind and steady, and you choose integrity even when it costs you. Because you see me, the real me, and you value what you see. She took a shaky breath. I understand if that's too complicated, if you need to keep this just friendship, but I had to be honest. Ryan's heart was pounding. He'd been pushing away similar feelings for weeks, telling himself it was too soon, too complicated, too likely to be used against him in court. But standing there with Sara looking at him with such vulnerability and hope, he couldn't deny the truth any longer. I'm falling for you too. Have been for a while. I just didn't know how to navigate it without making everything worse. So what do? We take it slow. We're honest about it with each other, with Emma, when the time's right, with the court. If we have to be. We don't hide or apologize, but we also don't rush. Ryan took her hands. And we see where this goes, understanding it might be messy and complicated, but also maybe worth it. Sara smiled, and Ryan saw in her face the same cautious hope he felt. They'd both been through enough to know that love wasn't simple, that choosing each other meant accepting complications. But they'd also both learned that the alternative, living safely but inauthentically, was worse than any complication. He kissed her, then gentle and careful, aware that this moment carried weight. This wasn't just two people finding connection, it was a choice with consequences, a line crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. When they pulled apart, Sara was smiling through tears. Your phone's buzzing. Ryan glanced at the counter where his phone lit up with a text notification. Jessica's name on the screen. Saw Sara's car at your house all day on Christmas. Really? This is how you honor family. Sara read it over his shoulder and laughed, though the sound was shaky. That didn't take long. Let it come. I'm done hiding. But even as he said it, Ryan knew the storm was about to break in earnest. Jessica's response came the next morning, a flurry of calls and texts that Ryan ignored while he made breakfast with Emma. But by noon, Frank had emailed with the inevitable update. Jessica's attorney just filed a supplemental motion. Claims Christmas Day visit proves inappropriate relationship affecting minor child. They're going all in, requesting primary custody for Jessica. Hearing is still set for January 15th. We need to be perfect until then. Sara's text came an hour later. This is my fault. I should have stayed away. Stop. We're not doing anything wrong. I'll testify. Tell them everything. It might destroy you. I'm already destroyed by that family. This is choosing what to build from the ruins." The 3 weeks between Christmas and the hearing passed in a strange, suspended animation. Ryan documented every interaction with Emma in a journal Frank had provided. Sara refined her statement, adding context and clarifying timelines. They didn't see each other again, both aware that another meeting would be twisted into evidence of obsession rather than connection. But they texted daily brief exchanges that felt like lifelines in choppy water. Emma seemed to sense the tension became quieter during their time together. One evening, while Ryan was helping her with homework, she set down her pencil and looked at him with those two perceptive brown eyes. "Daddy, is something bad going to happen?" "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "You've been worried, I can tell. You get this line between your eyes when you're thinking hard about grown-up stuff." Ryan touched the space between his eyebrows, surprised she'd noticed. "Some grown-up things are happening that I have to figure out. But nothing that changes how much I love you or how safe you are. That's always going to be true." "Is it about Miss Sara partly? Your mom is worried that my friendship with Miss Sara might be confusing for you." Emma considered this seriously. "It's not confusing. Miss Sara is nice and she makes you smile. I like when you smile. I like when I smile too." Ryan pulled her into a hug. "Thank you for being so smart and understanding." 2 days before the hearing, Derek Sullivan showed up at Ryan's house. It was Saturday morning and Ryan was in the garage working on a toy chest for Emma Cherrywood with dovetail joints, something that would last. He heard the car pull up, recognized the expensive purr of Derek's Lexus, and felt his shoulders tense. Derek appeared in the garage doorway, hands in his pockets, his usual confidence slightly diminished. "Can we talk man to man? No lawyers, no games. Just 5 minutes of honesty. Depends on what you want to talk about." Ryan set down his sander and gestured to the workbench. "Say what you came to say." Derek stepped into the garage, looking around at the tools, the half-finished toy chest, the sawdust covering everything. "Jessica told me you used to build furniture before she made you stop. She told you that." "She tells me a lot of things. Usually when she's had too much wine and her guard's down." Derek leaned against the workbench. "Look, I came here to tell you that I'm pulling my support for the custody motion. I told Jessica's lawyer this morning that I won't testify on her behalf." Ryan studied him carefully. "Why?" "Because the more time I spend with Jessica, the more I understand what you went through. The subtle digs, the constant criticism, the way she needs everyone around her to be less so she can feel like more." Derek ran a hand through his silver hair. "Last week she spent an hour telling me how I should reorganize my company's management structure. Not because she knows anything about construction, but because she can't stand not being the expert in the room. When I pushed back, she looked at me the same way she must have looked at you 1,000 times, like I was disappointingly stupid. If you're looking for sympathy, I'm not the one to give it. I'm telling you that I was wrong about you, about the situation, about Jessica being the victim here." Derek met his eyes. "I thought you were the problem, lazy, unmotivated content with mediocrity." That's what she told me, and I believed it because it fit the narrative I wanted. Successful woman finally finds a man who deserves her. He laughed bitterly. "And now I realize she didn't want a partner. She wanted an audience. Someone to reflect her glory back at her, and never outshine her, or question her, or need anything she wasn't willing to give." Ryan picked up a piece of sandpaper, running it along the toy chest's edge, more for something to do with his hands than from necessity. "What does Jessica think about you pulling your support?" "She doesn't know yet. I wanted to tell you first." Derek hesitated. "There's something else you should know. The tire slashing that was Tony Jessica's brother. She didn't ask him to do it, but she didn't stop him either when he said he was going to send you a message. I found out yesterday and told him if he pulls anything like that again, I'm done with the whole family." "Does Jessica know you're telling me this?" "No. But she will soon enough. I'm not built for this kind of drama, Ryan. I thought I was getting a sophisticated partner. Instead, I'm stuck in the middle of a family war where truth is optional and loyalty means lying on command." He straightened. "Anyway, I wanted you to know the custody motion is going to fall apart without my testimony. Jessica's lawyer was counting on me to paint you as unstable. Without that, all they have are vague accusations about inappropriate behavior with Sara. Ryan examined the toy chest, running his hand over the smooth cherry wood. Why are you really here, Derek? This seems like more than just a courtesy call. Derek was quiet for a long moment, staring at the toy chest. Because watching you choose your daughter's well-being over winning the war reminded me why I got into construction in the first place. I wanted to build things that lasted, things that mattered. Somewhere along the way I got more interested in building my reputation than building anything real. He looked at Ryan. You're building something real here. For your daughter. I respect that more than any contract I've ever signed. After Derek left, Ryan stood in his garage trying to process the conversation. Jessica's world was cracking, the carefully constructed narrative she'd built around their divorce crumbling under the weight of truth. Derek's defection would infuriate her, might even push her to more desperate measures. But it also meant the custody hearing might actually go in Ryan's favor. That night, Sara called with news of her own. I just got off the phone with Jessica. She knows about Derek pulling his testimony. She's absolutely furious, called me a homewrecker, said I seduced you to get revenge on her for years of being ignored. How did she find out Derek told her this afternoon? She called me immediately, screaming about betrayal and family loyalty. I just let her yell until she ran out of steam. Sara's voice was remarkably calm. Then I told her that her version of family loyalty required everyone else to lie on her behalf, and I was done with that. She hung up on me. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. I'm free. For the first time in my life, I said exactly what I thought to Jessica without worrying about the consequences. And you know what? The consequences aren't nearly as scary as I thought they'd be. They talked until midnight, making plans for after the hearing, regardless of how it went. Sara had already decided she was done trying to repair things with her family. The cost was too high, and the relationship on offer wasn't worth preserving. Sometimes you have to let go of the people who raised you to become the person you're meant to be. Sara's words carried a weight that Ryan understood intimately. He'd let go of Jessica. Sara was letting go of her family, both of them choosing integrity over comfort, truth over performance. The night before the hearing, Ryan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible outcome. Best case, the judge saw through Jessica's manipulations and kept the custody arrangement unchanged. Worst case, Emma ended up spending more time with a mother who saw her as a pawn rather than a person. At 2 a.m, he got up and went to Emma's room, stood in the doorway watching her sleep. Her stuffed rabbit was clutched in her arms, her face peaceful in the dim glow of her nightlight. This was what he was fighting for, her right to feel safe and loved and valued, regardless of which parent's house she was in. Whatever happened tomorrow, he'd make sure Emma knew she was worth fighting for. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Sara, apparently also unable to sleep. You ready for tomorrow? As ready as I'll ever be. We're going to be okay. Both of us. The truth is on our side. I hope that's enough. It has to be. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? Ryan smiled in the darkness. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we show them what integrity looks like. Tomorrow we show them what love looks like. Sara's response came after a pause. The real kind. The kind that chooses someone's well-being over winning. Ryan set the phone down and closed his eyes, holding on to that thought like a talisman against the uncertainty ahead. The courthouse in downtown Maplewood was a stolid brick building from the 1940s, its courtrooms paneled in dark wood that had absorbed decades of human conflict. Ryan arrived at 8:30 on January 15th, 30 minutes before the hearing was scheduled to begin. Frank was already there, briefcase open on a bench in the hallway, reviewing documents with the methodical focus of a man who'd done this hundreds of times. You look like you slept. Frank glanced up, assessing. Barely. Coffee helped. Good. Keep that energy. Judge Holloway runs a tight courtroom. She doesn't tolerate theatrics, which works in our favor. Jessica's attorney likes drama. Sara arrived at 8:45 wearing a navy dress that made her look both professional and vulnerable. She sat beside Ryan on the bench, close enough that their shoulders touched, a small gesture of solidarity that felt larger than it was. I'm terrified. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Me too. But we tell the truth and we trust that it matters. It has to matter. Otherwise, she didn't finish the thought. Didn't need to. Jessica arrived at 8:58 with her attorney Amanda Price, a woman in her 40s, with sharp features and an expensive suit that probably cost more than Ryan's monthly mortgage. Jessica's eyes found Ryan immediately held his gaze with something that looked like wounded fury before she turned away. The courtroom itself was smaller than Ryan had imagined, almost intimate. Judge Margaret Holloway presided from the bench, a stern-looking woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had a reputation in Maplewood's legal community for asking uncomfortable questions and seeing through carefully constructed narratives. Frank had warned Ryan about that. It could work in our favor or against us depending on how well you handle direct examination. Just tell the truth. Don't embellish and trust the process. The hearing began with Amanda Price laying out Jessica's case in language designed to make Ryan sound like a man whose judgment had been catastrophically compromised. Your Honor, Mr. Mitchell began a romantic relationship with his ex-wife's sister mere weeks after their divorce was finalized. He has exposed their minor daughter to this inappropriate relationship, prioritizing his own desires over the child's emotional stability. The evidence will show a pattern of poor judgment that warrants modification of the custody arrangement to protect Emma's best interests. Amanda gestured to a folder thick with documents. We have photographs of Ms. Brennan's vehicle at Mr. Mitchell's residence on Christmas Day. We have text message exchanges that demonstrate an intimacy that developed suspiciously quickly. And we have testimony that Emma herself has expressed confusion about the nature of her father's relationship with her aunt. That last part was a lie. Emma had never said anything of the sort, but Amanda delivered it with such confidence that it sounded plausible. Frank's response was measured, almost understated. Your Honor, what the petitioner characterizes as inappropriate is actually two adults forming a friendship based on mutual understanding and support. Ms. Brennan will testify that she witnessed years of emotional abuse during Mr. Mitchell's marriage to her sister. Mr. Mitchell will testify that he has been nothing but transparent with his daughter about his friendships, and the evidence will show that this motion is not about Emma's welfare, it's about Ms. Carter's desire to control her ex-husband's personal life. Judge Holloway made notes, her expression unreadable. We'll hear testimony starting with Ms. Carter. Ms. Price, call your first witness. Jessica took the stand with the poise of someone accustomed to presenting a carefully curated version of herself. Amanda led her through a series of questions designed to paint Ryan as a man who'd abandoned his family emotionally long before the divorce. Ms. Carter, during your marriage, did you feel that your husband was fully invested in the relationship? I tried for years to help Ryan see his potential, to encourage him to want more from life. But he was content with mediocrity, a factory job, a modest lifestyle, no ambition for anything greater. I realized eventually that I couldn't build the life I wanted with someone who refused to grow. Jessica's voice carried just the right note of regret, as if she were the one who'd fought valiantly for a doomed cause. And after the divorce, when did you first learn about his relationship with your sister? Early December. I discovered they'd been meeting in secret coffee dates, long phone conversations. When I confronted Sara, she became defensive, claimed they were just friends. But the speed with which their relationship progressed suggests something that started well before Ryan and I separated. That was the first direct accusation that the relationship had been ongoing during the marriage. Frank made a note but didn't object, better to let Jessica overreach and then dismantle it during cross-examination. Amanda continued building the narrative, each question designed to make Ryan look like a man whose personal choices were damaging his daughter. How has Emma responded to learning about her father's relationship with your sister? She's confused. She came home from Christmas at Ryan's house asking why Aunt Sara was there all day, why she seemed so comfortable in Daddy's house. Emma's only 7, she doesn't understand adult relationships, but she knows something has changed, and it's unsettling for her. Another lie delivered with maternal concern that would be convincing to anyone who didn't know the truth. Frank's cross-examination was surgical. Ms. Carter, you testified that you learned about Mr. Mitchell's friendship with your sister in early December, but your sister didn't contact Mr. Mitchell until early November. Correct? Jessica hesitated. I'm not sure of the exact date. Let me refresh your memory. Phone records show the first contact between them was November 3rd, more than 3 weeks after your divorce was finalized. Does that sound accurate? If you say so. And you testified that Emma expressed confusion about the relationship. Can you tell the court exactly what Emma said? Jessica's jaw tightened. She asked why Sara was at Daddy's house. Those exact words, "Why was Sara at Daddy's house?" Words to that effect. But you can't quote her directly because she didn't actually express confusion, did she? In fact, Emma has never complained to you about Sara's presence in her father's life. I know my daughter. I can tell when she's uncomfortable. Frank let that hang in the air, a mother claiming to know her daughter's mind without any actual evidence. Ms. Carter, during your marriage to Mr. Mitchell, did you ever publicly criticize him? Define publicly. In front of family members, friends, colleagues. Did you make disparaging comments about his job, his abilities, his character? I may have expressed frustration sometimes. Marriage is hard. Did you tell your extended family at Thanksgiving dinner that Mr. Mitchell lacked basic motor skills? Jessica's face flushed. That was a joke. Taken out of context. A joke that your sister documented as one of 47 separate incidents over 7 years. We'll hear her testimony later. But I'm curious, do you dispute her account of those events? Sara was always overly sensitive. She misinterpreted normal marital dynamics as something more sinister. So 47 separate incidents of public humiliation were all jokes or misinterpretations. I won't be characterized as an abuser by people who don't understand the complexity of our relationship. Frank moved on, but the damage was done. Jessica's defensive tone had undercut her carefully constructed image of wounded dignity. The morning session continued with character witnesses. Amanda called Jessica's mother, Patricia, who testified that Ryan had always been unsuitable for her daughter, lacking ambition, resistant to improvement, ultimately a disappointment. She described Sara's decision to support Ryan as a betrayal born of jealousy and weakness. Sara was always in Jessica's shadow. This is her way of finally mattering, even if it means destroying her own family. Patricia's testimony was passionate, but ultimately revealed more about her value system than about Ryan's fitness as a parent. Frank called Tom Richards Ryan's supervisor, who testified about Ryan's reliability and skill. In 9 years, Ryan Mitchell has never missed a shift without advance notice. He's trained half our maintenance staff, solved problems that stumped senior technicians, and consistently put the team's needs ahead of his own. If I had to describe him in one word, it would be steady. Emma's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, testified about the obvious bond between father and daughter. Emma lights up when she talks about her father. She brings in show-and-tell items he's made for her, a bookshelf, a toy chest, little wooden animals. She writes about him in every assignment that asks about family. There's no question in my mind that she feels safe and loved in his care. The afternoon session began with Sara's testimony. She took the stand with visible nervousness, her hands trembling slightly as she was sworn in. But when Frank asked her to describe what she'd witnessed during Ryan and Jessica's marriage, her voice steadied. I watched my sister systematically diminish Ryan for 7 years. It started small little comments about his clothes, his job, his interests, but it escalated into a pattern of public humiliation that I documented because I couldn't believe no one else was stopping it. Frank handed her a copy of her statement. Can you describe what you documented? 47 separate incidents where Jessica mocked Ryan in front of witnesses. Family gatherings where she told everyone he was incompetent. Social events where she flirted with other men and then criticized Ryan for not being more like them. Birthday parties where she invented stories about his failures as a father. Sara's voice cracked. I watched him absorb it without fighting back, without defending himself. And I said nothing because I was afraid of my family's reaction. That makes me complicit, and I'll regret that silence for the rest of my life. Amanda's cross-examination was aggressive, designed to paint Sara as an unreliable narrator with ulterior motives. Ms. Brennan, isn't it true that you've had romantic feelings for Mr. Mitchell for years? No. I barely knew him during the marriage. Then why this sudden intense interest in his welfare? Because watching someone suffer abuse and doing nothing about it haunts you. When Jessica started rewriting history to make herself the victim, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Convenient that your moral awakening coincided with your sister's divorce. Sarah's eyes flashed with something Ryan had never seen before, controlled fury. There's nothing convenient about losing your entire family because you told the truth. My mother won't speak to me. My sister has called me every vile name imaginable. I'm here because it's right, not because it's convenient. Amanda tried several more approaches, but Sara held firm. She acknowledged the developing relationship with Ryan, described it as something that grew from friendship into deeper feelings, and refused to apologize for it. Judge Holloway called a 15-minute recess. Ryan stepped into the hallway with Sara and Frank, all three of them silent with the weight of what was happening inside that courtroom. "You did well." Frank's voice was quiet. "Stay steady. We're almost through." When they reconvened, the courtroom doors opened and Derek Sullivan walked in. Ryan hadn't known he was coming. Frank had mentioned it as a possibility, but nothing certain. Jessica's face went pale when she saw him. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Derek Sullivan to the stand." Amanda was on her feet immediately. "Objection. Mr. Sullivan isn't on the witness list. He's here voluntarily to provide relevant testimony." "I'll allow it, but keep it brief." Derek took the stand and was sworn in. Frank's questions were direct. "Mr. Sullivan, you dated Jessica Carter for approximately 4 months following her divorce from Ryan Mitchell. Is that correct?" "Yes." "During that time, did you form opinions about the nature of their marriage?" "I did. Jessica told me that Ryan was lazy, unmotivated content with a mediocre life. She painted herself as a woman who'd wasted 7 years trying to elevate a man who refused to rise. I believed her because it fit what I wanted to believe." "And what changed your mind spending time with Jessica, seeing how she treated me when I didn't meet her expectations, realizing that her version of events was carefully edited to make her the hero of every story?" Derek's voice was measured, factual. "She told me, and I quote, 'I need to win this custody case to prove Ryan wrong, to show him I always win.'" The courtroom went silent. Jessica's lawyer looked like she'd been struck. That statement made me realize this wasn't about Emma's welfare. It was about Jessica's need to dominate, to be proven right, to punish Ryan for having the audacity to leave a marriage where he was treated with contempt. Amanda's objection was sharp and immediate, but Judge Holloway overruled it. The damage was done. Derek's testimony had exposed the vindictive core beneath Jessica's maternal concern. The final witness was Emma. Judge Holloway announced that she would speak with Emma privately in her chambers, and both attorneys objected for different reasons before being overruled. "I've been doing this for 23 years. I know how to talk to children without traumatizing them or leading them. We'll take a 30-minute recess." Ryan waited in the hallway, pacing while Sara sat on the bench with her eyes closed. Frank reviewed his notes one more time, though Ryan suspected he was just trying to appear calm for his client's benefit. 30 minutes stretched into 45. When the courtroom doors finally opened, Emma emerged with a victim advocate, spotted Ryan, and ran to him. He knelt and pulled her into a hug, feeling the rapid beat of her heart against his chest. "Did I do okay, Daddy?" "You did perfect, sweetheart. Whatever you said was perfect because it was honest." Judge Holloway reconvened the hearing and waited until everyone was seated before speaking. "I've presided over family court for 23 years. I've seen every variation of custody dispute imaginable. What I've learned is that children know more than we give them credit for. They understand when parents put them first and when parents use them as weapons." She looked directly at Jessica. "Ms. Carter, your daughter told me today that she loves both her parents but feels safer with her father because he doesn't make her worry about adult problems. She also told me that you frequently ask her questions about her father's personal life, who visits him, whether he seems happy, what he talks about with Aunt Sara. That's inappropriate. Children shouldn't be put in positions where they feel they're betraying one parent by being honest about the other." Jessica's face had gone from pale to flushed. Judge Holloway turned to Ryan. "Mr. Mitchell, Emma had nothing but positive things to say about your parenting. She described feeling secure, loved, and protected in your care. She talked about projects you work on together, books you read, conversations you have about her feelings. That kind of emotional attentiveness is exactly what children need during family transitions. The judge paused, consulting her notes. I'm not modifying the custody arrangement. The current schedule of alternating weekends and Wednesday evenings for Ms. Carter will remain in effect. However, I am ordering family therapy, both parents together with Emma, to work on communication and co-parenting strategies. She fixed both of them with a stern look. I'm also putting you both on notice that any further attempts to weaponize this child will result in sanctions. Ms. Carter, that means no more interrogating Emma about her father's personal life. Mr. Mitchell, that means being mindful of how you introduce new relationships into Emma's world. Am I clear? Yes, Your Honor, they answered in unison. But Judge Holloway wasn't finished. One more thing. Ms. Carter, I'm ordering you to complete a co-parenting education course focused on communication and conflict resolution. Mr. Mitchell has demonstrated restraint and emotional intelligence throughout this process. You need to match that standard if you want to be an effective co-parent. The gavel came down. Hearing adjourned. Ryan felt Sarah's hand find his under the table squeeze once, then let go. Frank was gathering documents, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Outside the courthouse, Jessica approached Ryan in the parking lot. Her attorney had already left, and she stood alone by her BMW, arms crossed against the January cold. You won. Congratulations. I hope you and my sister are very happy together in your moral superiority. This wasn't about winning. This was about protecting Emma from being used as a pawn. You're dating my sister. Don't pretend this was all noble sacrifice. I fell for Sara after the divorce, after you filed the custody motion. And even if it had been different, it wouldn't change that you spent 7 years treating me with contempt and then tried to rewrite history to make yourself the victim. Ryan's voice was quiet but firm. I hope you find what you're looking for, Jessica. But it was never going to be with me. You wanted someone to reshape into your image of success. I'm okay being exactly who I am. Jessica's eyes filled with angry tears, the first time Ryan had seen her cry in years. I gave you 7 years. I tried to help you be better. Want more. Her voice broke. And this is how you repay me. Ryan felt something soften in his chest, despite everything. I hope you find someone who wants what you want, who values what you value. But that person was never me. And pretending otherwise only hurt both of us. He walked away, leaving her standing in the parking lot. Sara was waiting by his truck, and they stood together in the cold afternoon light, not quite touching, but close enough to feel the warmth of each other's presence. How do you feel? Sara's voice was soft, like I can finally breathe. They drove separately back to Ryan's house, aware that even though the hearing was over, caution was still warranted. But that evening, after Emma was asleep, Sara returned. They sat on the couch in the small living room, the TV playing some forgettable movie neither of them was watching. My mother called. Sara's voice was quiet. She said, I've made my choice and I'll have to live with the consequences of betraying the family. I told her I'd already made peace with it. I'm sorry you lost them. I'm not. I traded a family that required my silence for the possibility of one that values my voice. That's not a loss, it's an evolution. She turned to face him. What happens now? Now we build something real. Slowly, carefully, with Emma's needs at the center. We don't hide, but we don't rush. We let this develop at its own pace. Ryan took her hand. And we trust that choosing each other was worth whatever complications come with it. The months that followed were a study in patience. Jessica completed her co-parenting course and emerged slightly less hostile, though warmth remained beyond her capacity. She started dating someone new, an accountant named Paul who was quiet and unassuming, nothing like Derek or Ryan. Emma reported that Paul was nice but boring, which Jessica seemed to find acceptable. The family therapy sessions were awkward at first, filled with silences and careful language. But gradually Ryan and Jessica found a rhythm of communication that prioritized Emma over their personal grievances. It wasn't friendship barely qualified as civility, but it was functional. Sara moved into Ryan's house in April, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, and 3 months after the hearing. Emma helped her unpack, delighted to have another adult in the house who would read with her for hours and didn't mind when she wanted to talk through every detail of her day. Ryan was promoted at work in May senior maintenance technician with a $4 per hour raise. Tom had lobbied for it personally, telling the plant manager that Ryan was the most valuable technician on the floor. The workshop in the garage grew more sophisticated. Ryan taught Emma basic woodworking safety, first respect for the tools, patience with the process. They built a birdhouse together, and Emma painted it purple with yellow polka dots, a combination that should have been garish but somehow worked. One evening in late August, almost 10 months after the divorce papers were signed, Ryan stood in his backyard watching Sara and Emma plant tomatoes in the garden they'd started together. The evening light was golden and soft, turning everything it touched gentle. Emma's hands were covered in dirt, her laughter bright as Sara showed her how to pack soil around the seedlings. They were debating whether to plant pumpkins for Halloween, and Emma's enthusiasm was infectious. Daddy, Emma called out, "Miss Sara says we can grow pumpkins if we plant them now. Then we better plant them." Sara looked over at him, dirt smudged on her nose hair, messy, completely happy. She mouthed 3 words, "I love you." Ryan mouthed them back, feeling the truth of it settle in his bones. This modest house, this second-hand furniture, this factory job, none of it was glamorous. But it was real, built on honesty instead of performance, on love that didn't require anyone to be less than they were. Emma ran over to him, her smile gap-toothed and genuine. "Daddy, are you and Miss Sara going to get married?" The question caught him off guard. "Why do you ask, sweetie?" "Because you look at her the same way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in my book, happy and safe." Sara had followed Emma over, knelt to the girl's level. "Would that be okay with you? If your dad and I got married someday?" Emma's face lit up. "Yeah, then you'd be my Aunt Sara and my stepmom. That's like double family." Ryan looked at Sara over Emma's head, saw the question in her eyes, and nodded. Someday, when the time was right. But the intention was there, clear and understood. That night after Emma was asleep, Ryan and Sara sat in the garden they'd built together, surrounded by the smell of earth and growing things. "I never thought I'd find this." Sara's voice was soft. "Find what a place where I could be completely myself and be loved for it. Not despite my flaws or because I hid them well enough, but actually because of who I am, including the messy parts." Ryan pulled her closer. "I know exactly what you mean. Jessica wanted me to be someone I wasn't. You just want me to be more of who I already am. There's a difference." They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies begin their evening dance across the yard. The divorce papers had been signed 10 months ago. Jessica had called him nothing. In that lawyer's office had told him he'd never amount to anything. She'd been wrong. He wasn't nothing. He was a father, a craftsman, a man who'd chosen dignity over rage, silence over retaliation, truth over performance. He'd lost a wife who needed him diminished to feel elevated. He'd gained a partner who celebrated his wholeness. Sara had risked her entire family to stand up for truth. Emma felt safe enough to dream about their future. And Ryan finally understood what Frank had meant that day in the conference room. Someone will notice your dignity. Sara had noticed. Emma had noticed. Derek in his own way had noticed. Even the judge had noticed. And most importantly, Ryan had noticed it in himself. "You know what I realized today?" Sara's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "What?" "The harder path really does have the better view. Everyone told me to stay quiet, to protect the family, to choose the easy route. But this..." She gestured to the garden, the house, the life they were building. This was worth every difficult step. Ryan kissed her forehead, then her lips, tasting dirt and happiness and the promise of tomorrow. "Yeah, this view is everything." Inside the house, Emma's nightlight glowed soft through her bedroom window. The small yellow house with white shutters stood solid in the gathering darkness, filled with the kind of love that didn't demand perfection, only presence, honesty, and the courage to keep choosing each other even when it would be easier to walk away. Sometimes strength looked like this quiet endurance, strategic silence, choosing battles worth fighting. Sometimes it looked like standing up when staying silent would be safer. Sometimes it was simply getting up tomorrow and doing it all again. Ryan had been called nothing, called mediocre, called a man without ambition. But he'd built something that would last, not just the furniture in his garage or the garden in his yard, but a family chosen rather than obligated, authentic rather than performed, built on a foundation of integrity instead of sand. The stars emerged one by one above Maplewood, indifferent to human drama, but beautiful nonetheless. Ryan held Sarah's hand and felt Emma's presence in the house behind them, and knew with absolute certainty that he'd always been enough. He just needed to find people who recognized it, and to recognize it in himself.